So essentially what I want to do is give an overview tonight of the CDC guidelines, how they changed and how that affects our district and what that means for the future. So for the elementary schools, when the CDC guidelines changed, it brought us to 3 feet apart. At the middle and the high school, it would allow us to go 3 feet apart if we were in areas of low, moderate, or substantial community transmission, and 6 feet apart if we were in high transmission. Next slide, please. So that was the first announcement that came out just from the CDC. We started preparing classrooms, cleaning previously stored furniture, and preparing new tapings of our classrooms. Shortly thereafter, the New Jersey Department of Health guidelines came out. They reflect and rely on the CDC, but they have their own New Jersey translation to it. It's the New Jersey Department of Health. They called for 3-foot social distancing for K through 6 with face masks, but 6-foot social distancing for 7 through 12 in high-risk categories, and they made no mention of cohorts. So if you were in a high-risk category, it was 6 feet social distancing, according to the New Jersey Department of Health. Sean, next slide. What that translated to for our district was that we were able to bring our K-6 students back 5 days a week with a continued shortened schedule. Grades 7 through 12, we were just able to maintain the same cohort groups because we had additional students, and those cohort groups were being overcrowded when we tried to combine cohort A with cohort B. We were able to do it in the K-6 because of the 3 feet. 7 through 12, we were not. A couple of people asked more specifics in that. So when we ran the numbers, we took the Power School numbers, the size of each classroom, ran the schedules, and of course we gave that information to the principals and their administrative staff for a close-up view. And they reported back to us that in the middle school, for example, there were 238 sections, those are different periods throughout the day and different sections in the periods, that if you combine the A and B cohorts and kept the 6-foot distancing, that they would be over capacity. And this essentially affected about 689 students if you took the total number of students over capacity each period. For grades 9 through 12, something similar, 226 sections were over capacity. That means 226 classrooms at different times during the day had more students than their capacity could hold if we adhered to the 6-foot social distancing guidelines. And that was for approximately 539 students. Next slide, please. There was some questions about whether or not New Jersey was truly in a high category. So this is the New Jersey Cali report from the New Jersey Department of Health. It's a weekly graph. This is our latest. And as you can see, not only is our region in high, but the entire state of New Jersey is high. And in fact, we have heard, anyone who's listened to the news, that New Jersey, I think, and Michigan are the 2 hot spots in the country at the moment. So we are clearly in the high category, which means we have to stay for 7 through 12 with 6-foot social distancing and masks. Next slide, please. So I have a number of questions about planning for September. And of course, as we discussed at, I imagine, every meeting we've had, we follow the the guidelines from the New Jersey Department of Education, the New Jersey Department of Health, and the CDC guidelines, as well as having a personal contact with our Bridgewater Township local health official, who actually we've been in contact with every day in the last week and week before. So currently, when the 6-foot social distancing in 7 through 12 is because of the high risk levels, and the 3-foot social distancing in K6 is with masks. So I want to make sure that we understand the distinction that the 6-foot social distancing for K6 is required if students are going to be eating, right? We have brought this directly to our health official for any kind of clarification, and we've had numerous contacts and conversations, and his recommendation is that 6-foot social distancing because we were in a high risk level for high school, and 3-foot for the elementary school, but students could not eat within 3 feet of each other at the elementary school. So again, we rely on the Department of Education, the Department of Health, the CDC, and we stay in close contact with our Bridgewater health official, Kevin Sumner, who we discuss this issue, as I said, weekly. Kevin has been our health official in the township, in the school district since the pandemic began. And he was recently reappointed for the last 2 years. So clearly it's not only the administration that has confidence in Kevin Sumner and his recommendations, because he's just received a wonderful vote of confidence by being reappointed on March 23rd for a 2-year term. So I think it's the responsible thing for us to do during a pandemic to follow the recommendation of the health official who agrees with the Department of Health, the New Jersey Department of Health, and the CDC. And in fact, that's the recommendation from our county superintendent in the Department of Education, that when there's any lack of clarity, we check with our local health officer. So the question that keeps coming up, and I'll try to be as clear as possible, is if things don't change. I've got quite a few questions like this today. If things don't change, would we be opening 5 days a week, full day in September? Well, if I could do that now, I would, or we would, right? If the guidance change allowed it to happen, we would certainly follow suit. Just as when the guidance said 3-foot social distancing in the elementary schools, we followed suit. So in terms of planning for September, we think reasonable people can plan, which we are, for full day, 5 days a week instruction, considering the rate at which the vaccine is being distributed, and we are planning for a 5 day a week, full day program. However, if something improbable but not impossible happens, and we end up being handed or given new guidelines, or guidelines that are very much like they are today, 6-foot social distancing at the high school, 7 through 12, we would follow those guidelines the way we are now. The only way we could manage 6-foot social distancing at the high school and the middle school or the elementary school, if that's the recommendation of our Bridgewater Township health officer and the New Jersey Department of Health and the CDC, and I would see no reason why we would break rank with them. But if that were the recommendation through some unforeseen circumstance or unexpected, we would have to double the space in the schools. Schools were not built for children to be 6 feet apart and hold the number of children that we have in our classes. So we currently have approximately students in the low 20s in our classrooms, but we can only fit 11 at 6 feet distance apart. When we go to 3 foot apart, we can fit the 22 students in, and we do. But as far as planning for September, I don't think it would be rational to plan to double the size of our classrooms capacity between now and September. And I also don't think it would be prudent for us to break from the guidance that's provided to us by the health officials, both from the federal, state, and local level, all in agreement. That is so. Once again, we are planning, and I think a reasonable person could make the assumption that at the level of distribution of the vaccine and the willingness that it seems that the flexibility that seems to be coming with that from both the CDC and the Department of Health, as evidenced by the K to 6 3-foot social distancing, that I think as it's prudent to plan for a full day, 5 days a week session for September. In part of doing that planning, part of the process has to do with the high school. We have to plan for a high school program that can pivot just in case the improbable but not the impossible happens. And I know at this time, 2 months ago, I never thought that we would have popped back up into high and would be the hot spot in the state of New Jersey. In the country with another state. So I don't think it would be prudent for us to plan a schedule that did not have the capacity to go back into a hybrid if necessary. So we would be planning for a single lunch program for the high school for next year, which would give the capacity both for full day instruction, and if we had to go into a hybrid, we would be able to go into a hybrid as well.